Okay, I'll declare the meeting now open, 7 p.m. on October 11th. Open council. Is there any conflicts of interest this evening?
None here.
No. No. Okay, we'll move on to 3. Public meeting application for the official plan and zoning bylaw amendment. Public hearing regarding a minor variance application for Maurice Papineau of 38 Lakeview Drive to build a detached garage with a height of 6 meters where 4.5 meters is the maximum. So this is moved by Councillor Bory, seconded by Councillor Gingras. Be it resolved that the council meeting be temporarily adjourned at 7:01 for the purpose of a public meeting. All in favor? Carried. Okay, I guess we'll move on. Is there any comments on that, or this is to open the meeting? So moved by Councillor Gingras, seconded by Councillor Bory, that pursuant to section 53 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, chapter 13, the public meeting is now officially open for the purpose of hearing comments regarding the following application. Application for minor variance, Maurice Papineau, 38 Lakeview Drive, file number A02-22. All in favor? Carried. Okay, is there any comments on that here at the table? Councillor Gingras.
Yes, I only have a comment that I support. I noticed at the beginning his yard, I think, was illegal but conforming, the size, so they're okay with that. And what a beautiful place from the photo, and absolutely I support the variance. Thank you.
Okay, I'll ask the CEO if you received anything in writing for this one.
No, we didn't receive any comments from the public.
Okay. This is just to accept the planning memoranda. So moved by Councillor Bory, seconded by Councillor Gingras. Resolved that council notes the planning memorandum prepared by J.L. Richards and Associates regarding the minor variance application file number A02-22. All in favor? Carried. And I guess it will be passed outside of the public meeting. So this is just to close the public meeting. If there's any other comments before we do that? No? Okay. Moved by Councillor Gingras, seconded by Councillor Bory. Resolved that the public meeting do now close at 7:03 p.m. and the regular council meeting is now reconvened. All in favor? That's carried. Okay, so this is to accept the minor variance. So moved by Councillor Bory, seconded by Councillor Gingras. Whereas having been satisfied the notice were given in accordance with the Planning Act, and be it resolved that due to the consideration of the proposed bylaw, council hereby concludes there are no further notice given with respect to the proposed minor variance of the provisions of the bylaw for the following property. Minor variance under section 45 of the Planning Act for lands described legally as 38 Lakeview Drive, parcel 23631, section SWS, Summer Resort Lot 5, PLM 934, PTLT 6, PLM 934 Hyman, PTLT 6 PLM 934 Hyman Part 1, 53R11073 Nairn and Hyman. And council hereby grants the approval for the minor variance subject to the outlined conditions in the notice document. All in favor? That's carried. And we'll just have to get another first and second and get everyone to sign that piece.
Okay. First and second.
Yeah. Let's get everyone to sign that one. We'll be good to go. Okay, we'll move on to number 4 on the agenda. Imad Alvi, PSD Citywide Incorporated Asset Management Consultant, to present to council Township's new asset management plan. So I'll turn it over if you can hear us. I've noticed when it said that your audio wasn't shared yet on that. I don't know if that has anything to do with it down in the corner. Just in the bottom left where it has like it says share audio. I don't think it's shared yet. Like if we press.
Hello, good evening.
Okay, just 1 second, Mom, we're gonna turn you off a bit.
Okay.
Wanna try it now?
Okay, how does that sound?
No. It's on the
It's on the computer.
computer again. Sorry, 1 second.
Yep, no problem.
Did you see where it says share audio?
It's a, Didn't know.
Strange.
Well, we can go with that or turn it all the way up on the laptop and go with that.
Just gonna try one thing.
Okay.
Do you want to try it again, Ahmad?
How does this sound?
Go, much better.
Okay, great. If everybody can hear me okay, good evening. Thank you, Your Worship, and good evening, councilors. I hope everybody's doing well this evening, and hopefully everybody can hear me okay and see my screen okay. I'm also having internet problems today, so which is why I've turned my camera off, and I'm praying that the screen share works fine. So please let me know if you're unable to see my screen. And I'm hoping we can go through the presentation without any issues on my side. So like I said, thanks again for having me here. I'm very happy to be here to be presenting you with the final version of the 2022 asset management plan for the Township of Nairn and Hyman. Today's presentation will be slightly different. We want to leave more time for questions. And I'm assuming you guys all had a good read with the AMP over the weekend. It was a long weekend, so I do appreciate the reading if it did take place. I'll go through a quick preamble for asset management, just a high level kind of overview, a refresher of sorts, and then we'll just dive into the Ontario Regulation 588, something that we want to hammer home to everybody. So that's going to stay as it is, as it was for the previous presentation. And then we'll go into the AMP overview, just again, summarized as high level as possible, right at the portfolio level, diving into the financial strategy, and then just our recommendations. So with that being said, I'll get started. Perfect. Okay, so a quick kind of summary of asset management and why it's important from a municipal context. It does help us to cover 3 key areas, a way to organize what we own, a way to understand what services we provide, and a way to ensure accountability to our residents and stakeholders for the services that we provide. ISO 55000 defines it as the coordinated activity of an organization to realize value from an asset. You can replace the word value with level of service, and you get the idea of how it can be overlaid in the municipal world and come in terms into relative to municipal infrastructure. And there's 3 key areas which kind of oversee and help you measure that level of service that you're providing. Those are cost, the cost associated with purchasing the asset, the cost associated with maintaining the asset, and finally replacing the asset. Then there's risk, the risk associated with that asset in if it were to fail, the risk associated if it weren't going to fail, and what is the risk in general it poses to the organization and the municipality. And then finally, the performance of the asset, usually measured through the condition of the asset, the state of the asset, and how much the asset has deteriorated. So these three elements come together and allow us to put a kind of a data point there, or a level of service that we can rank and classify and grade our services accordingly, which ties us back to the Ontario Regulation 588. Like I said in my previous presentation, it's kind of a three-stage scenario. Township of Nairn and Hyman has covered the first two. So the first stage was the 2022 requirements, which indicated that all core assets must be put together in an asset management plan, covering the six kind of sections and areas that should be included in that plan. That is for 2022. And then for 2024, the scope stays the same, the requirements stay the same, but it is now expanded to non-core assets. So like I said before, non-core assets are your buildings and your facilities, your parks and your land improvements, machinery, equipment, vehicles, all that good stuff. Your core assets, according to the OREG 588, are your roads, bridges, water, wastewater, and stormwater. So 2024 expands on the scope and includes now the non-core assets, and the requirements stay the same. 2025 is the bigger update, which is where, based on the previous 2-3 years, so the previous 2022 plan, 2024 plan, all municipalities in Ontario are now required to develop your proposed levels of service for the next 10 years. This is why we always kind of emphasize that 2022 and 2024 AMPs are more of a data gathering benchmarking stage, where you are gathering that data that is necessary to review and revise, and then based on those discussions, based on those data points, start developing your proposed levels of service for the next 10 years. 2025 also requires additional requirements. So there's an updated inventory analysis, a more robust lifecycle management strategy, as well as a financial strategy that not only addresses the shortfalls, but provides with kind of a 10-year framework on how to address the infrastructure deficit. And then a more detailed discussion of growth impacts and how they've impacted the life cycle and financial strategy. And so that's for 2025. So the one key thing we want to highlight here, and as you have read through the AMP, is that this is the start of and kind of the preparation for 2025. So beyond anything else, it is critical that we have good quality data that will help us make better decisions, and also good quality data that we can use as benchmark to develop our proposed levels of service. So like I said, again, 3 key stages, 2022, 2024, and 2025. So the township with this AMP is now compliant with 2024 requirements because we did the additional scope. We covered non-core assets as well as core assets. And I'll move to the next slide. So after 2025, asset management plans must be updated at least once every 5 years. And every municipal council shall conduct an annual review of its asset management progress on or before July 1st, and that the policy and plan be posted on the municipal website. So with all that context aside, let's dive into the AMP and answer the 3 key questions that we had answered before. Although now we have kind of gone through the data extensively, we've finalized it, and now we're at a point where we can be we're satisfied with the output values that have been generated, and we can kind of answer the 3 key questions that we had. So first would be, what is the current state of municipal infrastructure? So we'll look at the replacement cost, the overall valuation, and the overall condition, and where we stand from a national kind of context. And then what process improvements we did and we can take to increase confidence in analysis and decision making. Again, I won't go through it in detail. I did go through it a bit in my previous presentation, so I'm just going to keep it very high level. And then finally, what are the township's financial capacity, or what is the township's financial capacity to meet long-term capital requirements? So the overall valuation of the portfolio changed a little bit. I think previously we had not accounted for gravel roads, but we have now. So the total now is at 68.8 million. Putting that into the household kind of statistic, you're looking at $429,764 per household. That covers the entire asset portfolio, and this does not include assets that may be installed or created because of growth. You can see there in the graph that obviously roads is the biggest kind of category there in the portfolio in terms of costing, followed by water and then buildings and facilities. So bringing it into kind of a more, I guess, a more personal statistic, what we have there, what you have on the screen is the annual capital requirements per household. So this is how much each household needs to put aside to meet your capital requirements annually. So that's about $10,979. That does look like a high number, and I don't disagree. A lot of it is attributed to the small population and the scale of the size of the municipality. But again, you can see there that your biggest kind of category in terms of requirements are your roads and your roadside assets. The overall condition of the asset portfolio was still 61%, but what we did find in our final review of the inventory was that about 67% of assets are in fair or better condition. So basically, the more than half of the assets in the portfolio are either in fair or better condition, with the overall condition of the asset portfolio sitting at about 61%, which is equivalent to, in our rating scale, of a good grade. The graph on the screen there is the same one taken from the A&P. You'll see that we've split it so that we've kind of highlighted what section, how much each section of the condition rating scale is worth. So you'll see that for water, for instance, it is a fairly young system, so it's installed quite recently. So the majority of it is in very good shape, with some assets in your water treatment facilities coming at a very poor to a fair. Roads and roadside, you'll see there's a kind of a varied rating with each value and each rating having its own value, consistent, kind of spread across the scale, but leaning towards very good to fair. Buildings and facilities are kind of right there in the middle, with I guess about half of them being in fair shape, and then the other half kind of fair, poor or very poor. Vehicles is pretty much the same, with how your roads and roadside is, with roughly coming in at very good to good, and then the rest obviously leaning towards poor. Machinery and equipment assets are probably on the very poor side, just looking at it based on the valuations. And I think that I forget the exact equipment asset there, but that's the primary contributor to the very poor scale. But overall, you're looking at a condition of the asset portfolio sitting at 61% or a good. So how does that translate to the municipal context? Well, I think I had this slide up before too, but just a little bit more revised. So the 2019 infrastructure report card found that about 27% of assets were in very good shape, 36% were in good shape, and then 19% were in fair. Now that asset portfolio is only for your is only for the roads, buildings, and water assets. But again, I just wanted to put this up to kind of make everybody understand the context and how the issues that municipalities are facing are almost the exact same. Aging infrastructure, we talked about in our last presentation, general market trends as they have been the last couple of months and will continue to be very volatile, particularly for areas up north. And then also just the climate change and extreme weather events that we will likely see increase and in intensity and the probability of. So again, just putting everything into context to say that everybody's in the same situation and scenario here. All right, so as part of our project, and like I reiterated iterated in our previous presentation, we went through two key process improvements that will help the township with their analysis and decision making and forecasting. The first was the development of our asset lifecycle models. So we went through and developed detailed models for your core assets like your roads and your water linear infrastructure. And then for non-core assets, we had high-level models that we had created for the life cycle for each of those assets. The second was our risk frameworks. So similar exercise, we went through and we created a risk framework for each asset type. Well, I should say a high-level asset type. So for roads, for non-linear water, for water that is linear assets, and went through and developed risk frameworks for all of them. Again, based on metrics and data points that were available, we were able to create these models. And then lastly, I think one of the biggest things that we saw as part of this project was the impact of condition assessment. So we had, and in working with staff, we were able, staff was able to go through and get informal condition assessments for roads as well as buildings and facilities. This played a big part on how the information was presented, because when we were running it just purely based on age, we noticed that there was it wasn't accurate. It wasn't giving us reliable data. And once we had that informal staff assessment where staff went and made the inspection and assigned it a rating, we saw the actual results be more accurate and more realistic with what staff are experiencing and with what residents, I'm sure, are experiencing. So the key kind of requirement or recommendation here that I think I've highlighted in the A&P as well many times is the need to gather, assess condition data. It is very important that this dynamic data point continues to be updated and reviewed frequently and regularly, particularly for assets like roads, obviously buildings and facilities, and expanding onto other assets as well. We've done the initial setup for the asset lifecycle models and the risk frameworks in your citywide database. That's not to mention the great push for having that citywide or that central inventory that the township has now be put into the citywide database and allowing staff to run forecasting, to run condition reports, to forecast for the next 20 years or 10 years, or generate a risk matrix and then identify your high risk assets right away and start kind of figuring out what approach to take to address those. But I mean, in short, these three kind of these three key sections, or I should say key improvements will help the township with forecasting and with decision making. All right, so with those three elements brought into the system, risk and life cycle definitely, but with the help of staff, getting those informal condition assessments loaded into the system, we were able to generate forecasted capital requirements. So you'll see that this is the similar long-term forecast as I had shared with you in my previous presentation. Of course, it is now a little bit more finalized, so we can be comfortable with the values as they are. So I think it runs roughly up to 64 years. And that's usually, we did that because we wanted to factor in every, the replacement of every asset at least once in this time frame. So and this is why you'll see the annual requirements. They are like the annual requirements are determined based on the long-term forecasting. So this was the 64 years is how long it would take every asset in the township to be replaced at least once. So you'll see there that this is the forecast. You'll see you have kind of spikes coming up from 2022 to 2026. And then from then on, it decreases a little bit until it starts ramping up again at 2047. And I'd say that continues pretty much, until 2076. So with that kind of annual capital requirements value and that amount generated from the system, gathering data from staff on the funding that is available, consistent funding that is available, we were able to determine the annual capital deficit, which basically kind of, instead of just showing the numbers, I'll just say the percentage, basically meaning that currently the assets are funded at about 29% of their long-term capital requirements. Not too different from what we've heard with other municipalities as well. And then this slide is new. I wanted to add on to this just to kind of walk you through the investment averages that are there across the board. So we have 2016 municipal averages. You'll see that the target in reinvestment rates for roads and roadside for the township is 2.5%. The actual reinvestment rate is 0.7. The 2016 municipal average, according to the Canadian Infrastructure Report Card, was about 1.1%. Water was at 1.9%, and the actual reinvestment rate has been 1.1, which is pretty good if we were to compare it to the 2016 average, which had, on average, most municipalities were doing about 1.1, so that's great. Buildings and facilities, you'll see that there wasn't any actual reinvestment. So that is something that obviously we include into the recommendations as to make sure that you account for the requirements that's coming up for your buildings and facilities. The 2016 municipal average was 1.3 to 1.7. And then for machinery and equipment and vehicles, 10% is the target reinvestment rate, which is not unheard of. Actually, that 10% I've seen so many times this year as I've done through develop these AMPs. Many municipalities just don't fund, obviously prioritize other categories, but municipalities usually don't fund machinery equipment as much. So that's why it's at 10%. And the average or the actual reinvestment rate is 1.7%. And the same thing goes for vehicles. You're looking at a target of 5.5%. The actual reinvestment rate is 0.1. So collectively, we're looking at a target rate of 2.5%, but the actual rate is 0.7%. So these or this statistic, it's good to use it as a benchmark so you can compare and you have an idea of what you're aiming to get to at some point. Obviously, getting to 2.5 will take a long time, and in some cases will never be achievable, but it's good to at least be aware of that target so that you can set more realistic reinvestment rates and kind of specify for each particular category. All right, so our financial strategy stayed the same. We made this call because while the annual requirements did change a little bit, as did the replacement costing, what we found is that didn't impact the recommendation that we had given previously, which was that for tax funded assets, for them to kind of cover and be at full funding, it'll be a phase-in period of 20 years with an annual tax change of 4.2%. Again, this is just a mathematical equation. I've recently started saying this to in other presentations as well, that this is not something, it's purely an isolated mathematical exercise of just based on the annual capital requirements and the funding that is available, the sustainable funding that is available. What is the, how can we phase that in, and how much would the tax and rates go up by? So when we give this recommendation to you, please don't consider it as a formal recommendation. It is more of an understanding of how much is left and what needs to be how much of it needs to be increased and whatnot. And then for rate funded assets, again, the recommendation stayed the same, so it'll be a 15-year phase in with an annual rate change of 1.8%. And I think with that being said, I'm just going to go into the recommendations and kind of next steps. Again, they're very high level. The AMP has more information on the specifics, but the first recommendation is the continuous review and improvement of your asset inventory in consultation with internal departments and stakeholders. It is great that we now have that township, that inventory in an asset management database that has the tools that staff can run to generate, accurate forecasts, to identify assets that are in poor condition, to identify assets that are at risk or might be posing a risk to the township. And it just allows you to run several tools that will help you in decision making, budgeting, and forecasting. So that's great. One key recommendation I will say, and I have included it into the AMP, but it is the componentization of your buildings and facilities. The current inventory that we used for this AMP was basically a pooled listing of your facility. So one single asset was representing the entire facility, when of course we know that in reality, facility is made up of multiple components that have different useful lives, different kind of deterioration rates, and so on and so forth. So it is very important for that those buildings and facilities to be to undergo either a formal condition assessment, which will help you develop that componentized inventory, and then have that into the system, which will then obviously make your forecasting that much more accurate, because it'll be at the component level as opposed to the site level. And that also applies to your water treatment facility as well. It is a bit more componentized than the other buildings and facilities, but obviously we would need more it's obviously recommended to have more information there so that you can forecast and plan better. The second point there is the preparation for the 2025 requirements now. So basically benchmarking the data that you will now be able to collect over the next 2 years, improving your inventory, refining the life cycle frameworks and the risk model, so that come 2025, when we have to develop proposed levels of service, we're able to do that because we can be comfortable and confident in the data that we have currently. And then finally, continuous improvement and regular review. It is an AMP is a living document, like I said before. So it should be kind of regularly reviewed, particularly the asset inventory, and enhanced and improved upon when possible. And with that, that's the end of my presentation. I'll take any questions now.
Okay, thank you, Ahmad. Is there any questions, Councillor Petit?
Yes, I have a couple of questions. The first one is just mainly just for my own consideration. You said that there was a forecast estimated by age of all our assets, and one that was done with our staff giving you a more or less an actual condition of our assets. I was just wondering, which one was worse?
So through you, your worship, and thank you, Councillor. That's a great question. I will say right off the bat, the age-based condition usually is much worse, because it is not obviously assets don't deteriorate in a straight kind of curve or straight line. They usually have their own deterioration curve. So yes, the age-based condition was much worse.
Through you,
Yeah,
can I have a couple more?
yeah, go for it.
Okay. So, and you did mention it does take into account funding from other sources, i.e. the provincial government or whatever.
Through you, your worship, yes, Councillor, we did, but I think the condition was that they have to be sustainable. So they're you can we're confident that they will be available for the next so many years. So there was a level of sustainability that they needed to have. We're not taking into account one-time grants or anything like that. It has to be sustainable. So there was, I think, a 3-year mark that we specified, and we had to follow that.
So the impact of your assessment may not necessarily account for ingenuity of our CAO to gather up extra grants.
Through your worship, that's absolutely correct, Councillor.
Right.
Yep.
My last question. So you have two forecasts, one of 4.2% for to regenerate our assets, and 1.8% for the water.
Yep.
And then you say, well, it's not that bad. It might not be that high, or so. Are you standing by your forecast, or are you just saying these numbers out of your hat? I'm trying to understand why you backed off on the actual numbers that you forecasted.
So through your worship, again, Councillor, that's a great question. I just want a small clarification. I didn't backtrack, but I guess what I meant to say was that the recommendations, the exact percentage recommendations that we give annually, you can kind of view them from an isolated side. It's not taking into account other factors. If you were to do, for example, a rate study, there would be additional factors that would have been taken into account. Like, we didn't factor in any operations expenses or operations, amounts or values that are needed. We purely focused on the current asset inventory as it was, what that inventory needed per year, and how much funding was available. And then from there gave you a percentage. So I say this because we've had confusion with other municipalities of them taking this formally. What we give here is just a purely mathematical exercise of, hey, this is what the inventory needs per year. This is how much funding you have, and this is how much you would need to increase your rates by over these many years. There's other factors that go in that, because this is just a financial strategy, just highlighting the percentage and how much you need. It's not a complete picture. It's more of just a snapshot of the requirements and the funding that is available.
All right, thank you very much.
Councilor Jiguer.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. A lot of work, and we thank you for that. At the beginning, I was looking at a slide that was capital requirements. I'm not sure if it was forecasted or actual, and it was $10,979 per household. And I heard you mention it a few times, that, we are very in line with other communities, but on that item, I didn't hear you say that. What are your thoughts on that number for us?
So
do you know the diagram I'm referring to?
Yes, through your worship, I do. I think I believe it was the capital requirements, the annual capital requirements.
Yes.
So, I mean, if from my own experience, I've worked with other smaller size municipalities as well. So the capital requirements, like I said, a lot of it is dictated by the actual population size and number of households, which is why you're seeing such an increased amount, obviously, for Nairn and Hyman. So that particular kind of amount is roughly in the range of what I've seen. And then our team here, we've again, it all depends on the scale and size of the municipality. I would say it's roughly in line with the others, of similar size and scale.
Thank you. I have one more question,
Go for
Mr.
it.
Chair. And the other question.
Oh, go ahead. I'd like to finish.
That's okay, Justin. The other question was on asset conditions, and I'm actually looking at one of the bar graphs, and I'm a bit concerned to see that on the other one, buildings and facilities. We had nothing in the good or very good area. I'm not even sure if we were as far as fair. So should I be concerned about, and same thing on culverts, we have like 10% very poor and like 90% fair, it looks like on here. So are those things that we should be concerned about when we see those striking differences?
So through your worship, again, great question, Councillor. I would say concerned is the right, concern isn't the right word. I would say more of you have a picture now. The citywide database allows you to identify those assets right away. So you can potentially run a report and you can hone in on those assets specifically and investigate them further. Many of these, or at least some of these, you'll see could be just because they're running off of the age-based condition scenario, where they could actually be in fair shape, but they're coming out across as a poor or very poor because, again, of the age-based deterioration, kind of age-based condition that's generated for some of these assets. And then for others, like buildings and facilities, I think that is primarily due to the lack of componentization in the inventory. Again, it's just the nature of the way that we had PSAB first, which focused on just the financial side of things, and at that time it wasn't much of a priority to componentize buildings and facilities, so they were just loaded in as line items, one line item representing an entire facility. So for buildings and facilities, I think the recommendation I give in the AMP, and I'm reiterating that here too, is the need to have those componentized so that you can have a better output. Like the data is more accurate and reliable because it is now componentized. So you have the individual, condition ratings for each component, which then obviously would total up to the overall score of the facility. But that would be more realistic. So like I said, concern maybe is the more kind of extreme word, but I would want to investigate these poor assets further by and Citywide has that functionality, so you can filter those and identify them and investigate them right away.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you again for the report. Thank you,
Welcome.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah, I just got one question there about road infrastructure in there. Your numbers are always way higher than engineering and way higher than contractor when they bid on these jobs. And over the years, I've been watching your numbers. Like, just take, for example, McCharles Street, they're around $1 million. And then the engineer, we got an engineer and they said 800,000. And then we had it done with contractors, it was only around 400,000 or 500,000. Like, how can we manage our money when there's so much difference in costs from engineering to your report and contractors?
Through you, your worship. Again, great question too, Councillor. So like I mentioned before, I think I do agree with the discrepancies that have kind of arisen with these different kind of parties. What I can give you, my recommendation going forward would be, now that you do have or the township has a database, it can store these costs within the database, which will then kind of allow you to archive and have that, have a location where you can compare those costs at like they're readily available basically. And to your point about our costing being high, that's certainly possible. One recommendation we give in the AMP is the need to continuously kind of store and keep a track of your updated costing. I think for this AMP, we used a combination of the inflation. So we used indexing the historical cost based on the CPI tables. In some cases, in other cases, we use regional costing. And then in other cases, we were able to, I think we had in some cases unit costing from, such sources such as the property insurance assessment for your buildings and facilities. And then for your roads, I think we use a combination of regional costing, inflating the 2016, 2017 costs. So I can see how that might be, and that might lead to a discrepancy with the other parties. And ultimately, it's more of we'd want to, I don't want to say overstate, but I would rather have a little bit of overstating just so that when it comes time to do the project and undergo that kind of activity, it's a lot cheaper than we had planned for. But to your kind of question, the best thing is now that Citywide is active and ready to go. Staff can just start storing this information, which is what I recommend to others too. You can fully just store, information on a bid or a tender, or even studies and plans that you can include into this database. Anybody can access it, and then you can kind of have a quick location to say, okay, let's take a look at the costing from last year compared to this year, and you compare between different sources and parties.
Okay, thank you. Good. Okay, is there any other questions? Good. Okay, I'll thank you, Ahmad, for coming again this evening and
Thank you.
answering our questions.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And we'll pass, or we'll take a look at passing it towards later in the meeting, but yeah, so councillors, that'll come up under 7B, but we'll get to that, so. Okay, number 5, any discussions arising from previous council minutes?
None here.
No, okay, so moved by Councillor Gingras, second by Councillor Boyer, that the following council minutes be accepted as presented. Regular council meeting minutes, September 12th, 2022. All in favor? Carried. Okay, so 6A, we just did that. 7A, There is nothing on that, but I will just accept, be noted as received. So moved by Councillor Gingras, second by Councillor Boyer, resolved that the minutes and reports 7B to N are noted as received. Township Nairn and Hyman Asset Management Plan 2022, Public Health Sudbury District Unapproved Minutes, September 15th, 2022. D, Ontario Clean Water Agency Work Order Summary Report, August 31st, 2022. E, CAO's Report 2022-35, 2022, second quarter financial update. F, CAO's Report number 2022-36, update grant agreement, FCM's Municipal Asset Management Program. G, CEO's Report number 2022-37, update with Clush Foothills Economic Development Officer. H, CEO's Report number 2022-38, to update on termination of Building Inspector Services Agreement with the Town of Espanola. I, CEO's Report number 2022-39, public input received on columbarium. J, CEO's Report number 2022-40, municipal election, appointment of the Compliance Audit Committee. K, Municipal Superintendent's Report to Council, October 4th, 2022. L, Fire Chief's Report to Council, October 6th, 2022. M, Community Parks and Recreation Committee Minutes, September 15th, 2022. And N, Township Recreation Committee's Chair's Report to Council, October 2022. All in favor? That's carried. And okay, is there any talk for 7B before we pass the Municipal Asset Management Plan?
Can I just?
Yeah,
make a statement,
go ahead.
Mr. Chair, thank you. I just want to update everyone that the 2022 plan in front of you does not take into account all the work that's being done at Old Nairn Road currently. It's also not taking into account the extensive renovations we're currently working on for the fire hall. Those are stored in the citywide database as in progress. So they're not taken into account until they're marked as complete. So it's that we're actually in a little bit better state than what's actually there. Thank you.
So moved by Councillor Boyer, second by Councillor Ginga, be it resolved that council adopts the Township of Nairn Hyman Asset Management Plan 2022 that has achieved compliance with OREG 588-17 for the July 1st, 2024 requirements as prepared by PST citywide. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to next resolution I have is the CEO's report, but if there's any on C or D. No? Okay, so we'll move to the CEO's report regarding the quarterly financial update and talk conversation on that.
Yes.
Councilor McDonald?
I was expecting to get one for the third quarter, the end of the third quarter. It's closer to the end of the year, and I always value when we're over budget or we're under budget, or that's what I really value. And is there any chance of getting one third quarter?
Through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I was expecting that question would be asked. You're right. We are finished the third quarter. However, we haven't received a lot of invoices for September yet. So that hasn't been entered into our, some of them haven't been sent to us yet. So it hasn't been entered into our accounting program. So I figured I would wait a couple more weeks before I provided that report.
No, go ahead. Nothing against you, Melinda, but the old clerk used to give us one. And then when all the invoices come in, he'll update it. And that helped me a lot, instead of waiting for so long to, then I can I look at numbers all the time.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Counselor. I'll certainly have it for the next meeting.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, is there any comments on that report? Quarterly update? Don't see any, so moved by Councillor Gingra, second by Councillor Boyer, be it resolved the CEO's report number 2022-35, which presents the 2022 second quarter financial update to council be accepted as presented. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we have the
This is for the grant to accept the grant agreement. So moved by Councillor Boyer, second by Councillor Gingra. Be it resolved that the CEO's report number 2022-36 be received for information. And further that council resolves to enact bylaw number 2022-29 by giving it 3 readings at the October 11th, 2022 council meeting to accept the grant agreement to receive funding for the Federation of Canadian Municipalities Asset Management Program. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next, any comments on 7G, the Clash Foothills? Economic Development Officer, Councillor Boyer, or Councillor Gingra?
Just on the Posh Foothills economic, no, sorry. Sorry, Mr. Chair, go ahead. It was the election one.
Okay,
Okay, sorry, it was the election one.
okay, so this is,
Sorry, Mr. Chair, sorry.
all good.
Go
So
ahead.
it's just for our Economic Development Officer, so moved by Councillor Gingra, second by Councillor Boyer, be it resolved, the CEO's report number 2022-37 be received for information. And further that council welcomes Louisa Orford as La Cloche Foothills Economic Development Officer. All in favor? Carried. Okay, 7G regarding the termination of the building inspection service agreement with the town of Espanola. Is there any comments on that?
So we're gonna join the Massey, are we?
Yeah, so I'll ask the CEO to just provide an update on that.
Thank you, through you, Mr. Chair. Yes, this came about very suddenly. We just got notice of this on September 29th that Espanola was terminating our agreement. So I've had a meeting with the new clerk of Salvo Spanish and the interim clerk of Township of Baldwin. And we've agreed that we all want to continue to work together. And that Salvo Spanish is just looking at getting a contract together to hire a new chief building official, which they'll then contract out to us, very similar to what we've been doing in the past. However, he will be a CBO, not just the building inspector. So we don't expect costs to change because we were giving 15% to Espanola for the services of the chief building official. This time he'll be our main inspector. So we're hoping that costs will stay quite the same. However, I don't have those figures yet for you.
Thank you.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, just. It came about suddenly, no reason for it,
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Worship. When we entered into this agreement in 2020, it was always assumed that it wouldn't be forever. It was until we could figure out our own situation with how to work independently from Espanola. However, it was a good thing, so we kept it going, but for whatever reason, Espanola doesn't want to continue,
so they didn't give you a reason.
well, they did, it has to do with staffing, unfortunately, I can't disclose the
Okay, I
staffing
know.
issues,
I-
but, they're changing up their staffing.
Through you, Mr. Chair, one more question, have you looked at getting a quote from Sudbury?
I have to say, no, we haven't. We've always done it this way and it seems to work really well. Because there's so many similarities between our 3 municipalities and we're in close proximity to each other. So it saved on costs for travel, vehicles, that sort of thing, but
Except
It
that the
could be
Ontario
something we
building
can-
code is beyond the Ontario building code. It's
That's right.
not-
I believe, we did approach Sudbury and they didn't want it.
They didn't want.
I didn't think, if I
to-
remember right.
That's quite possible. All right, thank you.
Any other comments, questions on that? Okay, so moved by Councillor Boyer, second by Councillor Gingra, be it resolved the CEO's report number 2022-38 be received for information.
And further, that council directs an update regarding the proposed building service agreement be provided at the next meeting. All in favor? Carried. Okay, we'll move on to 7I. 7I, any comments on that? The columbarium. I don't.
I only got one there. I agree with the CEO. Their report there, that, not to go through with it.
Okay. I don't know if I have did we have a motion for that?
Oh, sorry, there was a blank motion.
Is there any other comments?
No, if the
No?
CEO recommends that we not go ahead, then that's good enough for me.
Councilor
Just a
Green?
comment, I support the CAO's recommendation also, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Let's see that first and second. There we go. Okay, moved by Councilor Patis, second by Councilor McDonald, be it resolved that the CEO's report number 2022-39 be received for information. And further that council notes the citizen feedback regarding the proposed columbarium project. And further that council supports not to go through with this project at this time. All in favor? Carried. Okay, 7J municipal election appointment of compliance audit committee. I think Councilor Ingram.
Yeah, I did have a question, Mr. Chair, but it's okay. I just figured it out.
Okay,
I just wanted to say, do we ever have any requests through you, Mr. Chair? Belinda, do we ever have any requests?
go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, thank you. I went back to 2014.
Mhm.
That's all I really could find until I went up in the attic.
Mhm.
I couldn't find.
No, yeah.
So, and I discussed it with the other CAOs and they haven't had it either. So
Okay,
it's a good thing, I guess.
yeah, it is a
Yeah.
good thing. Just a quick question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Belinda.
Okay, so moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor Despatie, be it resolved that the CEO's report number 2022-40 be received for information. And further that to section 88.37 subsection 1 of the Municipal Act 1996, chapter 32, the Council of the Township of Nairn and Hyman hereby appoints the following individuals to the Compliance Audit Committee for the 2022-2026 term of council. Clerk/clerk designate of the Township of Espanola, clerk/designate of Township of Baldwin, and clerk/clerk designate of Township of Sable Spanish River. All in favor? Carried. Okay. Next up is municipal superintendent report. I don't think there's any motions on that, but is there any comments? None. Okay, fire chief's report. None. Community parks and recreation minutes. We do have a motion on that for the Christmas party. Any comments on
Yeah, I
that?
got one there. Oh, well, why wasn't that budget for it? It was a budget time.
I think to my understanding, we were unsure of what the COVID situation would look at the time.
Oh,
So the last, I would assume the last two Christmas parties, the funding for that got put in reserve, so that's why we're pulling it for reserves for that.
What reserve is that?
The recreation reserve.
Okay, because I looked at it, there's only 3,600.
Okay, yeah.
3,000, out, we're gonna have next to nothing. But no, as soon as you said that,
Yeah. Okay, so moved by Councillor Depatie, second by Councillor McDonald. Whereas council notes the Township of Nairn Hyman Parks and Recreation Committee Resolution 2022 Rec-25. And therefore be it resolved that the committee be permitted to organize a municipal Christmas dinner to be held on December 10th, 2022. And further that the committee's request to pull $3,000 from the recreation reserve is granted. All in favor? Carried. Okay, and I don't think there's anything, if there's anyone on, any comments on the chair's report, recreation committee? Councillor Gingra?
Yes, I just wanted to say that we're having these wonderful parties, Halloween and Christmas, and I'm excited. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll move on to correspondences. This is just to note the correspondence is being received. So moved by Councillor McDonald, second by Councillor Depatie. Be it resolved that the correspondences A to C are noted as received. Alan Hewitt, CAO Treasurer of the Town of Espanola regarding agreement for building inspection services, September 29th, 2022. Frederick Diebel, Mayor, Township of Nairn and Hyman regarding letter to staff, council and taxpayers in Nairn and Hyman, September 26th, 2022. And Kathy LeBreton, advertising rep for the Royal Canadian Legion Recognition Book. All in favor? Carried. Councillor Gingra?
Yes, I just had a comment on item B. Mr. Mayor, I just wanted to say it's been wonderful having you here for 4 years. And especially starting when you were 19 years old. And I wish you all the greatest success in the world moving forward, whatever endeavor you are going to go after. I know you'll be successful. And thank you for bringing your age to the table. And I hope that moving forward, we will see a lot more young people come forward, because they're our future. Like, we're older and, you know, we'll be here as long as we might be here, but the future is the young people. Young people are always our future. So the more young folks we can get interested in helping run townships, the better. And thank you very much for your service, and I wish you all the best.
Thank you.
I just like to say I enjoyed the 4 years working with you. And I wish you well in your future.
I did as well, Councillor.
I would just like to say that I've only been here for 10 months, and I was very impressed with your demeanor, and you, in my opinion, were an excellent mayor with open ideas, looking towards the future, and I think you'll do just fine.
Thank
Thank
you.
you very much.
Thank you, everyone, for your kind words.
Thank you, Fred. It's been really nice having you, and you've done a really good job. I appreciate everything you've done. Thank you so much.
Thank you, everyone. Okay, I guess we'll move on to 8C regarding the advertisement for the Legion. I believe we used to do some sort of business card. But I'm not sure on the.
Mr. Chair, other years we've had a copy of all the ones, I think, if I'm not mistaken.
It's in here.
We had something to look at, different prices for different size, I think.
Yeah, it should be.
It's in the package.
Oh, isn't it?
Last year, we did the one for $375.
Yeah.
And it's the same price again this year. It's the 1/10 of a.
The 1/10 of a page.
Oh, I missed that somehow, please.
Yeah, $375, full color business card. I think that's what we've done in the
Yeah.
past
Yeah.
as well. Okay. If everyone's in agreement with that, we can go with that.
Yeah.
Is that, that's one? Okay.
Just a quick question.
Yeah.
Mr. Chair, through you, Belinda, are they doing the actual ceremony this year? Do you know? Because we switched to the business card. We used to do the wreath, and the
Right.
mayor would actually place it at the cenotaph on behalf of the town. And 2 years ago, COVID, they stopped that ceremony. Do you know if they are? Not sure.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I honestly haven't heard.
That's okay.
I was waiting to hear. Usually I get an email or a letter kind
Yeah.
of about this time of year.
Yeah.
But I know, like you said, last year they did stop the laying of the piece due to COVID,
Mhm.
and I haven't heard of it in recent.
Okay. I support the.
I will let you know as soon as I hear it.
Yes, thank you, Belinda. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and I support the business card as we did last year.
Okay, moved by Council DePatie, second by Council McDonald, whereas correspondence has been received by the Royal Canadian Legion requesting support for the military service recognition, but can be it resolved. Council agrees to purchase an advertisement in the amount of $375.00. All in favor? Carried. Okay, no motions, so we'll go to 10 bylaws. This is just to accept the grant agreement. So moved by Council McDonald, second by Council DePatie, be it resolved that being a bylaw of the Township of Corporation of the Township being a bylaw of the Corporation of the Township of Nairn and Hyman to enter into an agreement with the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. And the Corporation of the Township of Nairn and Hyman be read a first, second, and third time and finally passed in open council, and its number shall be 2022-29. All in favor? Carried. We go. Okay, for information only, so moved by Councilor DePatie, seconded by Councilor McDonald. Be it resolved for the information only items 11A be noted as received. All in favor? Carried. 12, other business. Councilor DePatie has requested discussion regarding the following items: ditching along McIntyre Street, speeding on Minto Street, and looking into changing our oath of office, installing no Jake brake signs on Highway 17, and options for installation of a Bell or Rogers cell phone tower to service Hyman Township. I'll turn it over to you.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, our superintendent and I had a look at the ditching that was done in front here as well. And he and I both agreed that they've done half the job. The culverts are way higher than the actual bottom of the ditch, and the water has nowhere to go. It's just, it will be just pooling. It's going to be a danger. There's also erosion from the shoulder onto the ditch. Can we send a letter or perhaps, or a phone call to MTO, I guess, because it's their responsibility, not necessarily MCON, but, and tell them that the job wasn't done properly?
Yeah, I'm sure that's a possibility.
Yeah, I had a lot of complaints about that ditch too, from the resident that lives on.
Yeah, I also did have complaints.
Yeah, we could send a letter, or we could direct staff to send a letter,
Please?
to the appropriate corporation, I assume.
I just have a comment.
Go
Mr.
ahead,
Chair.
yeah.
A phone call, well, several phone calls were made to the superintendent of our area for MTO. We discussed, exactly what you described, the erosion, the fact that the ditches are too deep, the culverts are too big. And there's nowhere for the water to go because it doesn't hook into the rest of our system.
No, it just.
That's it.
And I don't know if you noticed, was it last week or the week before, they came back. And they filled in some of the ditches. And so when I called him again, he said that was it. That's all they were doing this year. That's all the budget they had. And they told me if I had any more complaints, I could talk to the Minister of Transportation, not him anymore. So I would be more than happy to send a letter.
Okay.
Thank you.
We have a blank.
Yes, sorry.
Actually, you got no place to go, even if the culverts are right, because it's
Yeah,
dead end here. and dead end
These
down the other.
ditches here are at dead ends,
Yeah.
they don't go.
That's the same as the other. end.
It's ridiculous.
Moved by Councillor Dupatis, second by Councillor McDonald, whereas council has reviewed the other business item chaired by Councillor Dupatis regarding the ditching along McIntyre Street conducted by MCON, and be it resolved that council directs the CAO to send a letter to the MTO regarding the township's concerns. All in favor? Carried. Okay, number 2.
Okay, while campaigning, I observed speeding on Minto. And I understand that the police have been called. In my experience, calling the police is a waste of time until you're bleeding. Can we possibly look at putting speed bumps? Or bigger signs?
Well, bigger signs,
They still don't
You-
look,
you-
they
don't-
still
we
don't
know.
listen at the sign, but speed bumps.
Speed bumps will slow them down, all right, but it's a hazard also.
Because I know in Sudbury, there's one, and I forget the name of the street there, but it links Kelly Lake Road
Yeah,
to
Kelly Lake.
Region. And there's a speed bump
Every,
every so often, and it slows traffic down. It works.
Yeah.
If people don't want to listen, you have to resort to these kinds of means.
Can we get one on Smith Street too?
Yeah, it's not even long enough.
People coming in off that highway and people racing to get to work, to get to the highway, the speeding on Smith Street is crazy too.
What can,
I know speeding in all roads, everybody
Oh, yeah.
speeds nowadays.
what can,
Well,
Mhm.
we can direct the CEO to look into it. That's something we can do.
I'm sure speed bumps would cost us some money.
Yeah,
Maybe it's next council's decision to make. I don't know, but. Well, I'm sure it is because we're not gonna settle anything tonight.
Well, that's a bad speed because the house is so close to the road and kids are there all playing. And I don't know. You gotta do, we should do something about it.
okay, I guess we could do a blank motion to direct the CEO for a report next meeting. So that,
We're adding to her load. I apologize through you, Mr. Chair.
Goes with the job.
Yeah.
I think 2 larger signs are good too. Not that it works great, but it's something. Is there even a speed
Yeah, but
limit
the
sign
drivers
there?
know it's speed limit.
Yeah, is there
Oh,
even
yeah,
a
they-
speed limit sign there? I wonder. There must be.
Bigger, yeah, there's signs there.
Oh, there is.
Oh, yeah.
When you first turn.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Kids are out there playing basketball and everything.
I think in our, we've looked at it a few times over the years. Signs really don't do anything. Oh, people don't. They either don't look at them or forget they're there, or they just lose their.
Yeah.
But speed bump,
Speed bumps never go away.
they never-
okay,
It's a public consultation.
yeah,
Good or not.
okay, moved by Councillor Boyer, second by Councillor Hingra, whereas council has reviewed other business items shared by Councillor Dupatis regarding the issue of speeding along Minto Street. There, be it resolved, the council directs. To prepare a report regarding speeding on Minton Street. All in favor? Carried. Okay, next one.
Okay, so number 3, I've since found out that it's in the municipal act that we have to swear an oath to the monarchy of Great Britain, which I don't find makes a lot of sense. We should be swearing allegiance to the people we serve, the taxpayer. So apparently we can't change that we swear allegiance to the monarchy, but perhaps we can add that our primary concern is the taxpayer, and we're going to serve them with due diligence.
So go ahead, Councillor.
I disagree with Ms. Councillor Dupaty on this one. We, right now, as we sit here, and I'm sure on October 26th, when the election is, we swear allegiance to the head of state, and our head of state used to be the Queen of England, now it's the King of England. And so that's who we swear allegiance to. Until our head of state changes, I don't agree that we should ever not swear allegiance to our head of state. Having said that, however, if you have an Indigenous status, possibly I've heard and seen and read that some Indigenous people are given an option to not swear allegiance. And I'm sure it's because of the Truth and Reconciliation Committee and what we've been through in the last few years with them. And so they've been allowed to not swear allegiance to the head of state. However, I feel we should always swear allegiance to the head of state. And right now it's King Charles III.
Well,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead.
Mr. Chair, just a quick rebuttal. The taxpayers of Nairn Center and Hyman Township pay my salary, and they expect me to do a good job for them. And that's who I want to serve.
Okay, so like Councillor Ginger stated, I believe there is a secondary one for Indigenous people that don't swear that aren't willing to swear to the king. What I would look into, I'm not sure if this is possible, whether a municipality can do your government mandated municipal act oath and then do as well as a separate Township of Nairn and Hyman oath, and the council of the day could put anything they want in there and do a separate oath as the Township of Nairn and Hyman's councillors. So you can have a second one that's not mandated by the Ontario government.
Well, I would really like to bring a motion forward that our CAO look into that, please.
Okay.
And to find out if the Métis has the same status in regards to swearing allegiance. I'd like to move that one myself. Thank you.
Okay, moved by Councillor Dupaty, second by Councillor McDonald. Whereas council has reviewed other business items shared by Councillor Dupaty regarding including the wording of the oath of office to include serving the citizens of our community. And be it resolved that council directs the CAO to prepare a report regarding the oath of office and any other methods of doing so. All in favor? Carried. Okay, fire away.
All right, next item. I know, several municipalities who have, the no jake break, signs. I don't know though, seeing that they're on Highway 17, do we need the MTO to put up those signs or would the municipality? And if it is the MTO, then I'd like to bring a motion that our CAO request those signs.
Yeah.
Through you, Mr. Merchant, yeah, it would be MTO that we would have to request those signs for. In the past, I don't know if everyone remembers back in 2020 when we were petitioning MTO for advanced signage for the rest stop at Sand Bay. We had brought about statistics that it was unsafe. There wasn't enough advance notice for the turning lane, and we've now since had a fatality there. And we got a very blunt no. And so I would more than like to petition for that, but it seems they're very stringent in what they do. They just follow the rules and with no regard for, you know, an actual community's unique circumstances. But I'd be more than happy to petition that and perhaps with the next council support, take it to, you know, the MP or the MPP.
Thank you.
Just a comment, I absolutely agree with it. I live on the highway and I hear it all the time. Years gone by, Councillor McDonald would have been here. We did write a letter and we were very insistent that we wanted the signage up. And the reason that they told us, and we're probably going to respond the same way, the reason the MTO wouldn't put the sign up is because we're advertising for a truck driver to not use a safety device in his truck being a jake brake. I know he's got regular brakes. I know it's just an engine brake, but that's the reason that they gave us, that they weren't going to post a sign to tell trucks to not use a safety device. When you go through Espanola, that's their road. They can do that. Even Blind River, that section of Highway 17 is Blind Rivers. And that, I think, is where we may also go if we get a no, is if we want to apply to have this section of Highway 17 as the Township of Nairn. I don't know what it involves, but if Blind River can do it, why can't we do it and have that section ours? And they've got their sign up. So
Through you, Mr. Chair, yeah, I don't know if we want to take care of that section of Highway 17, but
see, if it's just signage and picking up garbage or something as simple as that, I think the town can handle that. If it's us maintaining it, that's a whole different story, but I can't see them stopping snow plowing right here. You know, I don't know how they do it in Blind River, possibly through Mr. Chair, the CAO might want to check that because I know they have signs out there.
well, I know there's lots of
Yeah.
signs out there. Why can't we have
Yeah,
one?
exactly.
So let's keep harassing them.
That's what they've told us in the past. Absolutely. I support continuing to harass MTO.
Well, that's what we did with the lights by your place there, remember? The
Oh,
street lights for
oh
years,
God, it's
took
brutal.
years.
That's where they start. Oh, you can add it in the letter about the culverts.
Moved by Councillor Ginger, a second by Councillor Boyer, whereas council has reviewed the other business items shared by Councillor Depatie regarding the installation of no Jake brake signs on Highway 17. And be it resolved that council directs the CEO to write a letter to the MTO regarding the installations of a no Jake brake sign. All in favor? Carried. And your last one.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you. I guess if I don't get reelected, I'm going out with the bang. Yeah, so while campaigning, I was in Hyman Township. And I realized I had no cell service. These people, some of them live there, and many spend weeks on end during the summer. And they have no lifeline for 911 to call the police, the fire, the ambulance. Listen, can we write a letter to Bell and Rogers, both of them, because they're the two biggest ones, if they would consider putting a tower to service our citizens?
Yeah, I agree with you because we had complaints already about that, the taxpayers up there. And I think we looked in for grant money, but I don't think we found any.
Well, look, Bell and Rogers should be
You would
able
think they
to
would, yeah.
to pay for their own installation.
Maybe we went the wrong way. We should have went for the Bell, project.
Yeah.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I have a tower on my property that leases the land from me. And when that was installed, Bell came to the township. Our former CIO was working, and they had done a topography of the area. And they were doing the connection from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury. So there were no gaps if you were going down Highway 17. And so when they came to this area, or any township they went to, quite frankly, they came and looked at the topography of the area and said that hill is the highest point in the area, and it happened to be my place. And so they left a little note at my door and requesting a meeting that they wanted to lease some land for me. So that's the process. I do have a contact number if we want to, if we want to call or connect with the Bell. It's a Bell tower on my
I
property.
thought it was a Rogers tower.
No, it's a Bell tower.
Yeah.
Oh, that's who gives me money anyway. So I have that contact and we could contact him. It is Bell, like we can do either or. But I do have that contact information. I could pass it on to the CAO if she wants to investigate. Like I think it's their corporate agenda. And that particular day, their corporate agenda was to the continuity of service from Sault Ste. Marie to Sudbury. To branch off now, that's different. So maybe we might have to go to Rogers or a different carrier. But in the moment, it was their process and they approached us. We didn't approach them whatsoever. So.
Well, through you. Go ahead.
Sorry, I know that just right here on Birch Street, they all are using Starlink up there because
Yeah.
you can barely use your cell phone, no internet, no TV.
Same in Worthington.
Just right here on Birch.
That tower in San Bay would help them out there, you think?
I don't know if that would reach that far, because there's one right here.
Yeah, I know, it sounds strange when you said that.
I think Starlink would work up there. It works in all
Yeah, the
rural
Starlink
areas.
works, but
Yeah, the Starlink would work for
tower-
this. Yes,
That's what it's.
yeah, right. But yeah, we have options. Yeah.
Thank you, Mr. Worship, through you, Mr. Worship. I was under the impression when we had discussions with H&M Kofi for the internet, that they would service the San Bay area with internet through potentially a 5G tower. So that tower could potentially be already in the works for being built, and perhaps Rogers or Bell could either put one of their antennas or whatever it is they use on top of it, or B, the residents would be able, whoever had a cell phone would be enabled to do Wi-Fi calling. So Wi-Fi calling is just literally a button you push on your settings. And it basically takes your phone call through the Wi-Fi, through the internet, just like a regular phone call. So I thought that was kind of the long-term plan, but I haven't been given any updates about that tower yet.
So you, Mr. Chair, can we try and get some information? Through Bell or Rogers or HM Kofi? And a timeline, if HM Kofi is supposed to do it.
Sure help our fire department up there.
I'm
They
sure,
got very
yeah.
bad contact up there. Oh,
Okay. Moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor Despatie, whereas council has reviewed the other business items shared by Councilor Despatie regarding options for installation of a Bell or Rogers cell phone tower to service Hyman Township. Be it resolved, council directs the CAO to prepare a report on any discussions that she may have with Bell, Rogers, or H&M Kofi. All in favor? Carried. Okay, this is just for the confirmatory bylaw. Moved by Councilor McDonald, second by Councilor Despatie, being a bylaw to confirm the proceedings of the council of the corporation of Township of Nairn, Hyman be read a first, second, and third time. And finally pass an open council, and its number shall be 2022-30. All in favor? Carried. Moved by Councilor Despatie, second by Councilor McDonald. Resolved that the meeting of October 11th, 2022 do not adjourn at 8:33. And to meet again on the inaugural council meeting for the 2022-2026 term, or on the 15th day of November, or at the call of the mayor. All in favor? Carried.
I would like to thank all of you for welcoming me some 10 months ago. I can tell you it was a learning experience, and I want to wish each and every one of you good luck in your life.
Thank you. Good luck, everybody.
same thing.